Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As-salatu salamu ala Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Thank you very much and merci beaucoup pour l'excellente introduction to l'argument. Your talk was really excellent. And it's my pleasure to talk about the response assessment. You had an introduction, but when you want to assess something, it's always better to know what we're talking about. And one of the peculiarities of Hodgkin lymphoma is that the cancer cell is just a niche. It's actually surrounded by immune infiltrate. So when we look at Hodgkin lymphoma lesions, we're not looking at the cancer cells, but we're looking at the microenvironment. And therefore, this is essential to understand its uptake with FDG, which we know that it's related from the Warburg effect, not just to the highly proliferative, which is tumor, but also the immune infiltrate active. And what is the advantage of Hodgkin lymphoma with this regards compared to other lymphoma type, for instance, diffuse large B-cell, which also show a high uptake, is that the amount of cancer cell is completely different. And therefore, when we want to assess response, we have this amazing information thanks to the switch off of the metabolism, because after just 2 cycles, we have a prediction of what is going on at the end of the treatment. And as brilliantly said before, we can already after 2 cycles see whether the patient will respond or not. And this has been described in historical studies, which is the advantage over morphological imaging. We might have partial response on CT, but we have that switch off of the metabolism, which predicts the outcome. And this is even, this is also an historical graph, but gives you the idea that not only compared to morphological imaging, but also to the predictors and the scores for the prediction of the outcome, FDG PET is superior in setting the line whether the patient will do good or not. And this has drawn the paradigm of response to Hodgkin lymphoma. This is a setup. We are all aware of the fact that for Hodgkin lymphoma, whether in adults but also in pediatric population, you have to do the first 2 cycles, you set response, and this is what we give for granted. And this is thanks also to the enormous collaboration, international collaboration, and is the perfect example how things reach success. You find a simple score, and you validate it not just among the nuclear medicine discipline, but with your peers, clinicians. And I would like to remember Professor Maignan, who we missed some years ago, may he rest in peace, because he gave an amazing example to the community how things should be done, because he put together the Deauville group, the first workshop, and after that the Deauville score became sort of the standard for the response assessment. Well, very simple indication. You looked at the background. This is something we do when we analyze PET immediately, naturally. We look at it and look whether there is a hotspot compared to the background, and you have these 3 references. And afterwards, the validation and the Lugano classification, which I still consider the best way to interpret PET-CT in lymphoma. There are other publications coming on, taking into account also the CT response, but this is, to my opinion, the most broadly accepted indication for response assessment. Very simple, you have an uptake below or similar to the liver, and that is a response to the treatment. But if we give this for granted, we must be aware of the fact that our eye is tricked by the background. We see here 2 different shades, but if we remove the background, we see that it's the same line, but depending on the background, we can either interpret it as positive or not positive. So therefore, in the pediatric population, there have been some struggle and some attempt to quantify the actual visualization that we have with our eyes into something more reproducible and not operator dependent. And this is because, as I said, the background influences. And if we look at the different cases and we give it to experts in the field to interpret, some can give 1, some can give 2, some can give 3. This is not a big deal if we're still below Deauville score 3, because anyhow the patient won't have any change into the interpretation and into the management. But when it comes to cases like this one, and you look what the 5 experts have written about the interpretation, you have 2 saying it's a response and 3 saying it's not a response. So if we want to switch the treatment, escalate or de-escalate, what is the perfect indication in this case? Or even in this other example, which for me is definitely a residual tumor, but someone gave it as 3. 3 out of 5 interpreted as a response. So therefore, the Aeronet C1, which was a huge, it was started in Germany, but it's a huge attempt to use and to validate the use of PET-CT and the stratification of the treatment according to the early response assessment. From the first IHP criteria used in the protocol came out with a precise quantification, the QPET. The QPET actually uses the uptake in the residuum and relates it to the liver. And therefore, you have some numbers which can be reproduced in any machinery you do it. You don't really need to have the specific image reader from Hermes. You can also do it in your own softwares where you analyze the PET data. And actually, by using this continuous value, because it's not discrete as the Deauville score, you can actually say that 0.95 is negative and 1.3 can be considered positive, which is slightly above the uptake of the liver, which is exactly what we want to, as a quantification, to say that there is no response. And actually, they could also give the indication also for Deauville 5, which some groups say it's twice the uptake of the liver, some say it's 3 times the uptake of the liver. So this way, they give the precise indication of the uptake. But this is not all that we can offer with PET. So we have the advantages, we can quantify it with a QPET, but we don't look, I mean, the disease is not just 1 spot or 2 spots. Sometimes, especially when you have advanced stages, as seen here in Algeria, you need to give a sort of burden of the disease. And there have been a lot of studies, especially in the adult population, using metabolic tumor volume as a predictor of the response, and also to stratify the patient. But when you look at the data on Hodgkin lymphoma, they're a little bit limited. This is also because, as I said, there's a huge difference between how Hodgkin lymphoma behaves to treatment and how non-Hodgkin lymphoma behave to treatment. There's a sense in using SUV variation, using metabolic tumor volume in non-Hodgkin lymphoma, because there the amount of cancer cells is widely huge, and then even small variations can be a predictor of response. But with Hodgkin lymphoma, you either have on or off. This is very straightforward. But still we can have an advantage. Therefore, I've seen the literature in pediatric Hodgkin lymphoma, and there have been some studies, really interesting studies like this one already 7 years ago, where by computing the metabolic tumor volume and the total lesion glycolysis at baseline, so as an add-on to the stage, as an add-on to the predictive scores, you could say what was going on afterwards with the patient. Other groups more recently in the C1 study made the same analysis. They are both retrospective analysis, though this is the cohort is small and this is the pitfall, major pitfall, because that retrospective analysis just proved that with specific way of computing metabolic tumor volume and total lesion glycolysis, you can predict the outcome. Moreover, they could say that at interim evaluation, so not just at baseline, but after the 2 cycles, the amount of tumor that you have there and the volume left is a predictor. Now, just note that we have two independent predictors, which is interim with the metabolic tumor volume with a threshold of 2.5, whereas TLG is with a threshold of 41%. So kind of schizophrenic. So either use one method to compute the volume or the other. So that's probably because it's a retrospective analysis. Also, the children oncology group made similar evaluation in their trials. So they made assessment on different threshold methods for the computation of the volume. Well, they came out with the two of a background as a reference, and also together with bulky and the response. These were three also rational factors that predicted the outcome of the patient. Moreover, they could also say that whether the patient was a rapid responder, the information given by the volume was an add-on. So it could also differentiate the outcome in those patients being rapidly responding. But still, this is a retrospective analysis. So here comes to the data that we have in our new trial, the C2 trial, which will be in few months published, the final results. Out of this trial, which you can see from the scheme, is designed to tailor the treatment based both interim but also late response assessment, and the patients are divided into 3 treatment levels. Of course, the first one is having the most light treatment. And as an Italian group for pediatric oncohematology, we designed a parallel prospective study specifically evaluating the add-on of the metabolic volume and semi-quantitative analysis together with radiomics and with the partial response, but this is not the aim of my talk here. And what we first did is when you compute the volume, you first have to say which is the best method, because as I mentioned in the paper before, they either use the fixed cutoff for the SUV max and also the 41%. So you can choose either or, you cannot choose both of them and say they are independent predictors, because it's kind of no sense. And actually, the method that you use makes a huge impact on the volume. Of course, any of them is predictive, even if you use 41% and you underestimate the effective amount, because it's proportionate to the tumor, but it's not the more precise one to do. So therefore, the first thing that we did in our pediatric cohort, so very specific prospective analysis, we analyzed the 4 more widely used methods to see which one is the best to use for this pediatric population. And we noticed that with exclusion of the 41%, which once again you can see the excluded one on your left side is really underestimating the volume. The other 3 methods were overall similar. But what was the add-on is that with the fixed cutoff of 2.5, you had a better computation even for small volumes at early response assessment. So therefore, it was probably the most reliable and the more easily reproducible cutoff. So therefore, we analyzed our cohort. We used all the different parameters that I said, not just the volume, but also semi-quantitative parameters. And we also introduced the Dmax. What is the Dmax? It's the maximal distance between the 2 most hottest lesions on FDG. And this was demonstrated in non-Hodgkin lymphoma to be a sort of kind of independent predictor. It's very simple. And since we have to go for simple things, because simple things then get into practice, very cumbersome, complicated, they don't. So we introduced also this one in our analysis. We analyzed the first 300 patients, and you see the timing of the protocol at PET0, ERA-PET, and late response assessment. And we kind of proved was already supposed to happen, meaning that baseline evaluation could predict the early response of the patient. You can see here the semi-quantitative parameters, Dmax, and also the volumetric analysis predicting the response. And of these, we could identify those that were sort of independent predictors. But this is not what we're really aiming were aiming to. We wanted to see which of these parameters at baseline or that early response could predict the outcome, in this case, the event-free survival. And we noticed, interestingly, that at baseline, it was the volume which was predictive, not the uptake, because the uptake is pretty high even if you have one single lesion. So that was not that robust in predicting, but the amount of volume was predictive, and we could set some cutoffs which could clearly differentiate the event-free survival. On the other hand, when we look at the early response assessment, it was no more the volume, because the treatment works pretty well. So the volumes, the residual volumes are really small, and so it's not the volume anymore which makes the difference, but it's the uptake of the residual tumor, which is quite rational. I mean, it gets straightforward as to the logic. And here again, we could predict. But one of the add-ons of the analysis is that the Dmax, both at baseline, so the distance between the two most hottest lesions, was predicted of the outcome both at baseline and early response assessment, which was something new, meaning that, of course, Deauville works very nice. I mean, we all did with Deauville. For the protocol, the QPAT helped us to make a very robust, reproducible evaluation of the response based, of course, on the sort of Deauville. It's a variation, a quantification of the Deauville. And we could add on also the volumetric and the Dmax as add-on for the analysis. And you can nicely see here that what makes the difference. You might have a smaller Dmax, I mean, a smaller distance, and in both cases you have some residue, but the patient on your left side is cured, the other one has relapsed, because both at baseline and early response you have this scattered, I mean, the residual disease is distant from the other. And this was proven also in multivariate analysis, so therefore we merged together these parameters, clinical, because we had also the stage and the bulk volume as predictor, and we could see that by merging together we gave a sort of risk stratification of the patient. At baseline with the clinical data and the metabolic data, and at early response assessment as well, you can nicely see how they predict different event-free survivals. So bringing us to the conclusion that there is room for adding the volume, for adding Dmax, and this is the first analysis in pediatric population that Dmax proves to be valid. And if you want to have an insight into what we have actually done, you have the publication, if you want to read it, which came out earlier this year. Therefore, when we want to build future trials, we must think of also introducing these parameters to stratify the patient, because it was done for Deauville score, which is the standard for interpretation. It doesn't mean that you go out of here and you neglect Deauville score. It works. You can also use QPAT to quantify if you're not certain whether there's a response or not on those gray shades of responses, but there is room for implementation of the treatment. And for this, I would like to thank all the international collaboration, especially the Italian group of oncohematology who helped build up this trial and bring the results together. And I would like to thank you for the kind attention.